Welcome to today's ceremony. My name is Christopher Felmley, Superintendent of the Southern Boone School District. I'm honored to be speaking with you on such an important occasion. We are here today to honor our service members and to remember the sacrifices they have made and the courage it takes to defend honor, duty, and country. Your service and sacrifice has kept our country safe and free. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson first proclaimed an Armistice Day for November 11, 1919. In proclaiming the holiday, he said, "To us in America, the reflections of the Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the Council of Nations." It's important to remember that veterans are defending us 365 days a year. The heroism that has been demonstrated time and time again by our veterans, from the American Revolution to the global war on terrorism, is sometimes unnoticed by those of us who enjoy the security that their sacrifice has provided us. Thank you to those who have served, as well as those who continue to serve today. America is safe because of you. Thomas Paine said, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must undergo the fatigue of supporting it." Military men and women and their families know and understand the risk. They accept that risk and in many cases do so that others won't have to. Roughly 1% of our population serves in the military. Consider the impact of those individuals that they have on the world, defending freedom and protecting democracy. Winston Churchill once said, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." Thomas Jefferson said, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance." Today we give thanks to live in a country where citizens from every generation willingly and courageously raise their hand to stand the watch. Our debt to those heroes can never be repaid, but our gratitude and respect must last forever. President George H.W. Bush said, "The United States will always be a force for peace in the world. But the peace we seek is real peace, the triumph of freedom and prosperity, not merely the absence of war. We can never know which war will be the last, but we take as our hope the prophecy of Isaiah, that nations shall not lift a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." And yes, we hope, we pray, that as years progress, the faces of war will recede into our distant memory, but the memory of our veterans and their sacrifice will never fade. I believe President Reagan said it best. There's a special sadness that accompanies the death of a serviceman, for we're never quite good enough to them. Not really. We can't, because what they gave us is beyond our powers to repay. And so, when a serviceman dies, it's a tear in the fabric, a break in the whole, and all we can do is remember. Thank you for taking time to remember our heroes. They never gave up on us, and we can't give up on them. God bless you all. God bless our veterans. God bless our country.
This year's Veterans Day theme is Vision, Veterans in Focus. All veterans make a sacrifice to serve their country, whether physically, emotionally, or by being away from their loved ones and missing important life moments. As the saying goes, hindsight is always 20/20.
Vicki Hartzler proudly represents the good people of Missouri's 4th Congressional District, which is composed of 24 counties in west central Missouri. Vicki grew up on a farm in Cass County, learning the value of hard work, family values, and a reliance on God. These values have guided her life as she attended and graduated from Archie High School, the University of Missouri, and the University of Central Missouri. They inspired her as she taught public school for 11 years in Lebanon and Belton, and as she joined her husband in a small business. Vicki began her public service in 1994 when she successfully ran for state representative in the Missouri General Assembly, where she served for 6 years. She was elected to Congress in 2010 and serves on the House Armed Services and Agriculture Committees. She currently serves as the ranking member of the Tactical Air and Land Subcommittee on the House Armed Services Committee and is the chairwoman of the House Values Action Team. Vicki, her husband Lowell, and their daughter Tiffany reside on a working farm near Harrisonville in Cass County.
Hi, I'm Congresswoman Vicki Hartzler, proudly representing Missouri's 4th Congressional District. And as a former teacher, I'm glad to join you back in the classroom today. I wish I was there in person, but I'm glad to also participate virtually. And I'm so honored to be part of your ceremony today where you are honoring veterans. You know, we owe veterans everything, our freedoms, our way of life, and I wanted to highlight today some of those veterans who live amongst us, even in Boone County. Did you know that Boone County shares the namesake of Daniel Boone, who was one of our earliest veterans? He served during the Revolutionary War as part of the Kentucky militia, and there are currently 10,000 veterans living in Boone County. And today I wanted to just share with you 3 of them. And I hope that you'll be inspired by their stories and hopefully have an opportunity to meet them and thank them personally. But the first veteran I wanted to introduce you to is Dennis Mills. He grew up just outside of Centralia on a farm, and like many teenagers during that time, he would hang out with his friends. He enjoyed playing football, doing chores on the farm, but life changed for him soon after graduation when he received a letter in the mail that was basically a draft card saying, you need to come serve your country. And so he willingly did, like so many Americans have done before, left family, left home, left everything, and went to serve his country. He reported to Jefferson Barracks, which is just outside of St. Louis, where they told him he was going to become a Marine. So he went through his basic training, and he was sent to Vietnam. When he arrived in Vietnam, he became a leader of a reconnaissance patrol, leading many different missions in the very dangerous environment over in Vietnam. And when it came time for him to come home, he decided that he wanted to re-enlist, that the cause of helping others around the world get the freedoms that we enjoy here was worth staying for. And so he continued to serve, and just a few days before he was scheduled to come back home, his unit was attacked, and he was very badly wounded. In fact, he came back to a hospital in Tennessee where he stayed for 1 year in the hospital recovering. But thankfully, he finally got well enough. He was able to go back home where he got married, raised a family, 3 different children, and where he continues to live today. But it wasn't over. In 2003, 23 years after he had left his service in Vietnam, his leg became infected because of injuries that he sustained back when he was in Vietnam, and he had to have his leg amputated. But that hasn't stopped Dennis's love of this country or his desire to continue to serve. In fact, if you've ever been to Centralia Memorial Day and been to their cemetery, you will see the avenue of flags that Dennis is very much a part of every year, displaying hundreds of flags in that cemetery because he wants everyone to appreciate the freedoms that we have, to honor our flag, and to honor those veterans who have served us. So I hope you have a chance to meet Dennis and that you will follow his example of service to others. Our second hero that I wanted to share with you about is named Mike Letterly. And he was originally from St. James, Missouri, but while he was in high school, he enrolled in the Army Reserves. And between his junior and senior year, he did his basic training. And then after graduation, he went back and got his advanced training. And he ended up serving for 27 years. And in fact, he rose to the highest level of rank that you could as an enlisted officer, Command Sergeant Major, which is pretty impressive. And he led the largest Missouri contingent into a deployment since World War I, when he led over 2,000 Missouri soldiers, or 2,000 soldiers in general, 50 of them from Missouri, over to Kosovo in 2008 and 9. Then he was also deployed to Afghanistan in 2012, and he was part of a mission, an agribusiness development team, where they focused on working with the local residents to try to teach them practical agriculture skills, give them income that would help buffer them from some of the terrorists and some of their ideas for ways that they could make money. But while they were there, just 2 weeks, they came under attack when someone with a 350-pound vehicle-borne explosive device attacked their compound, breached the perimeter, and that was followed by grenade and small arms fire. And Mike led the Missouri contingent, not just of Army Reserve officers and Guard officers, but also the airmen, to repel the attack and to secure the base. And as a result, 18 Purple Hearts were awarded to Missouri soldiers and airmen. That means they were actually injured. Thankfully, no one died, but that's pretty serious if you get a Purple Heart. You had some pretty major injuries. 26 out of the 53 received various accommodations on top of the Purple Heart and medals for acts of valor and heroism, and Mike was right there leading that charge, and we were just so proud of him. But when Mike wasn't serving our country in the Army, he wanted to serve his community in another way. And he became a police officer with the Columbia Police Department, where he served for 21 years. And he retired as a police sergeant in 2013. And then he's gone on to lead community organizations. He was the CEO of Retrieving Freedom, which is based in Sedalia now. But it's a place where they train service dogs to work with our veterans as well as children with autism. And so Mike did an amazing job leading that organization, and now he's deputy director of the COPS organization, which stands for Concerns of Police Survivors, which is a wonderful nonprofit that comes alongside the family of law enforcement officers who have lost their life in the line of duty to provide them lifelong support. They have camps for the kids, they have seminars and retreats, they're just a buddy system. They just do amazing things to help these families, and Mike is there as their deputy director. So Mike, we thank you for all that you have done. The thing that you all will find especially neat about Mike is that his 2 children graduated from Southern Boone County High School. And once when he came back in 2012 after being deployed, he actually surprised the kids there at the high school. And some of you may remember hearing about that. He presented the school with American flags. So he is certainly a hero right there in your midst. And the last veteran, the last hero, Boone County hero I wanted to share with you about, I'm not going to share their name because you may recognize them. There's somebody that you may know. And this is a woman who was raised in Southern California, of all places. And now here she is in Southern Boone County. But she studied graphic arts at Pasadena Junior Community College. But she didn't have enough money to move on to the university. And so she says she kind of wandered aimlessly for a while, and then she became a Christian. And so she prayed about and asked God for guidance. What should I do with my life? And she felt like God said, join the Army. So she did. And she became a part of a Patriot missile battery crew. The Patriot missile is a very important missile defense system that we have, that when there's an incoming missile, it recognizes it and it launches and it hits it mid-air and prevents the people on the ground from being hurt. And so she was deployed she was in Germany, then she was deployed to Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm in the early 90s. It was extreme, austere conditions. She only got a shower once a week, just a field kitchen. It wasn't fun. It definitely was a sacrifice, but it was worth it because she was protecting Iraqi citizens from Scud missiles that were coming in. And while she was there, something very important happened. She received a care package from a bunch of school children. And in that package were pictures that the children had drawn. And she was inspired at that moment to become an art teacher. She knew what she was supposed to do. And after she came back home, she finished her degree, became an art teacher, and has been teaching at Southern Boone High School for over 20 years. You know her as Teresa Schaefer, and I know her as a teacher who helped one of her students win our 2016 Congressional Art Competition with this awesome picture that was displayed in the U.S. Capitol for a week. So thank you, Teresa, for serving your nation, serving all of us, being willing to leave your home and to keep us all safe. You embody true heroism and what we all should live like and be like. And we want to thank all of our veterans. I hope that on this Veterans Day, you will take the opportunity to not just thank Teresa Schaefer and Mike Letterly and the others in your community, but you will also reach out to other veterans you know, say thank you, and also consider what you can do to make a difference in your community for others just like they did, as well as for your nation. So God bless all our veterans, and God bless each one of you. Thank you.
We would now like to welcome the District 50 elected official from the Missouri House of Representatives, Ms. Sarah Walsh.
Hello, I'm State Representative Sarah Walsh for Missouri's 50th House District. It's an incredible privilege to be with you today and to participate in honoring and remembering our veterans and keeping them at the center focus. How do we do that? Well, by events such as this one. I'm honored that so many events such as this one are held all throughout my community, from Jamestown, Missouri to California, Missouri, to here in Ashland, Missouri. Thank you, Southern Boone, for hosting this event. Thank you to the men and women who sit here among us that we honor today. Thank you to the men and women who are unable to sit with us because they made that ultimate sacrifice for our freedom so that we could be here today. I try every day to remember and to live in the memory of these veterans and to hopefully live a life always that is in honor and reverence to their many sacrifices. To the Gold Star families, we remember you today, and the Silver Star families and the Blue Star families, we remember you today. It is an honor again and privilege to serve as your state representative. Thank you, veterans. Thank you, Southern Boone. God bless.
I will now introduce the Southern Boone High School Chamber Choir playing I Lift My Lamp.
hand on your heart. You're a
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. The poppy became a symbol of remembrance and loss after World War I, the Great War, when battlefields began growing and sprouting poppies, as captured in the poem In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. Today, many countries, not just the United States, use the poppy as a way to honor those we have lost and also the veterans who served our countries. With this poppy, you honor our fallen, our servicemen and women, and the veterans who answered the call. All proceeds of our poppies are donated to the Central Missouri Honor Flight. Their mission is to transport America's veterans to Washington, D.C. to visit the memorials dedicated to honor their service and sacrifices.
We would like to thank the veterans from our community by recognizing them by their name, branch, and years of service. William Abrams, Army, 8 years. Family of Don Anderson, Navy. Richard Anderson, Marines, 6 years. Cody Arnold, Marines, 6 years. Chris Ash, Army, 22 years.
Travis Banning, Army, 23 years. Sergeant Brad Bartow, Army, 5 years. Ray Bate, Marine, 2 years. Joe Bauman, Army, 2 years. Mr. Lawson D. Bayless, Army. Mr. and Mrs. Glenn Beckmeyer, Miss Kimberly Beeson, Navy, 20 years. Chris Benny, Marines. Mr. Jimmy Bennett. Mr. Mitchell Bennett, Navy, 4 years. Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd Berry and Lacey, Army. Mr. Calvin Binder, Army. Family of Roy Birdsong, Navy. Ken Bishop, Army, 20 years.
Mr. Frederick White, Navy, 6 years. Mr. and Mrs. Chester Bowden. Mr. Jeff Branch, Navy, 6 years. Mr. Frank Branson, Air Force, Navy, 2 years. Mr. James Branson.
Mr. Craig Bratton, the family of William Brindiger, 8 years, Army Marines, World War II. Bill Buck, Marines. Carl Budemeyer, Navy. Brad Bullard, Army.
Ed Bullard, Army, 2 years. Joel Bullard, Cliff Bullard, USMC, 4 years. Timothy Bullard, Gary Bushell, Army, 18 years.
Tommy Burchell, Army, 16 years. Frank Burkett, Marines, 3 years. Bob Burns, Navy. Greg Buskaker, Army, 3 years.
Curtis Kane, Army. Bill Carlos. George Carney, Army, 2 years. Mrs. Beverly Casey, Army, 15 years. Mr. Bill Casey, Army. Mr. Steve Chavons. Mr. Thomas Cochran, Dwayne Cockrell, Air Force, 20 years. Nino Consiglio, Navy, 2.5 years. Mr. Vern Cosper, Mr. William Cotton.
Robert Cottrell, Navy. John Cox. Frankie Crane, Army, 2 years. Bill Crane, Army, 2 years. Lawrence Crane, Army.
Robert Cundiff, Army. Family of Donald Cunningham, Army. Mr. Richard Cunningham. Mr. James E. Curtis, Army, 33 years.
Family of Mr. Michael Dalton. Mary Davis, Navy. Philip Davis, Navy, 21.5 years. Bill Dees, Army. Sean Dement, Army, 5 years.
Donald D. Hunt. Mr. Wes Donley, Army, 2 years. Bob Dorman, Army, 33 years. Kent Dunwoody.
Randy Eckley, Air Force. Family of Mr. Steve Elder, Mr. Jim Fasciotti, Army. Richard Finneman, Army. Jerry Filkins. Mr. Jeff Finley, Army, 25 years. Joe Forsey, Army, 3.5 years. Michael J. Folka, Navy, 20 years.
Family of Walter Garrett, Army, 2 years. Norman Gary, Air Force Reserve and National Guard. Mr. and Mrs. Gary George. Lonnie Gilpin, Air Force, 4 years. Rusty Gilpin, Marines, 10 years. Mr. and Mrs. Bobby Glasscock Jr. Mr. Wilbur Gooch, Missouri National Guard. Mr. James Green, Army. Miss Michelle Gregory, Army. Mr. William Gregory, Army. Dayton Grover, Army. And Dr. Oscar Gura. Family of Norland Hackman, Army, 4 years. James Hagan. Curtis Harmon, Army. Ronnie Harmon, Army, 4 years. Lawrence Harmon. Mr. Harry L. Harris, Air Force, 4 years. Mr. Greg Hopkins, Army, 10 years. Greg Heckmeyer, Army, 7 years. Mr. William D. Helms, U.S. Navy, 2 years. Johnny Hendrick, Army, 8 years. Mr. Mitch Holbrook, Mary Hopkins Nichols, Army, 25 years. Mr. Michael Howard, Marines, 21 years. Ron Hoyle, Army, 2 years. Kenny Hudson, Mr. William Huff, Army, 10 years. Elin Haying, Air Force, 4 years. Family of Stephen James Hyatt, Grant, United States Air Force. Roger Higgins, Marines, 2 years. Family of Mr. Chester Hilgedick, Navy, 3 years. Marvin Hilgedick, Army, 2 years.
Amy James, Army, 9 years. Paul James, Army, 21 years. Tom Jefferson, Navy. Mr. Donald Jeffrey, Army. Mr. Kevin Johnson, Army, 26 years. Reed Johnson, Army. Mr. Timothy D. Johnson, Air Force. Zane Johnson, Navy, Army, 6 years.
Raymond Kessler, Air Force, World War II. James Ketterson, Navy, Iraq and Afghanistan. Mr. and Mrs. James Ketterson, Army, Gulf War. Mr. Alfred Keyes. Mr. Darren Kimball, Army, Gulf War. Ron King, 3 years, Army, Vietnam. Donald D. Lacey, Air Force, 4 years.
John Lacey, Army National Guard, 6 years. Mr. Kyle Lacey, Army, 30 years. Gary Lammers, Army, 2 years. Mr. and Mrs. Larry Lammers.
Mike Ladurl, Army, 27 years. Robin Lake, Air Force, 7 years. Family of Orville Langer, Army. Kevin Langer, Army. Bobby C. Lewis, Navy, 2 years.
Family of Raymond Lewis, Charles Whipple, Mark Logston, Navy, 20 years. Family of Charles S. Long, Air Force, 20 years. Mr. and Mrs. Lewis Long.
Miss Lisette Matthews, 19 years, Army. Red Mathney, Army, 2 years. Larry Martin, Army, 2 years. Donna Martin, Army, 11 years. Larry Marshall, Army, 24 years.
Colonel Mark McLemore, or Army, 33 years. Mr. Carl McKenzie, Air Force. Mr. Jack McCaskill, Army, 25 years. Mr. William McCaskill, Army, 5 years. Mr. Darren Motti, Army, 13 years.
Mr. John Mustaine, Army. Mr. Ben Murphy, Coast Guard, 19 years. Mr. James Motter. Mr. Paul Moorfield. Mr. Virgo Morrow. Mr. Larry Miller, Navy. Mr. Adam Middow. Mr. Johnny Melvin, National Guard, 8 years. Dax McLennan, Marines.
Mr. Riley Nichols, Army. Price Nichols, Marines, 2 years. Mr. and Mrs. Paul Nichols. Family of Mr. Stanley H. Nichols, Army, 2 years. Mr. Jim Milges, Marines.
Mr. Logan Nichols. Mr. Jerry Nichols, Army, 2 years. Mr. James Nichols. Mr. Gary S. Nichols, Army, 2 years. Derby Nichols. Mr. Alan Nichols, Navy, 4 years. Miss Tiffany Nash. Andrew Ottinger, Army, 23 years. Family of Robert Harmon, Army. Mr. Todd Patton, Army. Miss Heather Paul, Army, 3 years. Cecilia Payne, Army, 4 years. John Petralia, Army, 2 years. Jimmy Phillips, Army, 7 years. Tim Phillips, Navy. Family of Sergeant Gene Payne, United States Army.
Krista Pounds, Navy, 4 years. William Joseph Pounds, Army, 20 years. Navy, 8 years. William Austin Pounds, 2 years, Army. Melissa Polkrabeck, Marines, 8 years. And family of Mr. Marvin Purcell, Air Force, 3.5 years.
Doug Quinn, Navy. Gary Raines, Navy, 5 years. Angela Ramshead, Army.
John Reeder. Jay Reese, Army, 6 years. Mr. Cecile Refstead. Mr. Jesse Richardson, Army. Dwayne Green, Army, 20 years. William Rogers, Army, 20 years. Mr. Jerry Rollins, Army. Family of Robert Roode, Army. Eddie Run, U.S. Navy. Family of Mr. Melvin Rupert, Army and Navy. Sergeant Jacob Russell, Marines, 5 years. Mr. Richard Riles, Marines. Miss Chiang Rita Ryan, Air Force, 2 years. Mr. Scott Rigel, Tom Rigel, Marines, 3 years. Mr. Alan Sanders, Air Force. Brian Sapp, U.S. Air Force, 21 years. Christine Sapp, Air Force, 10 years. Family of Mr. Archie Lee Sapp, Army, 28 years. William Lemon Sapp, Air Force, 4 years.
Mr. Glenn E. Sapp, Army. Jeff Sapp, Navy. Mr. Kenneth Sapp. Mr. Melvin Sapp, Air Force, 4 years.
Rex Sapp, Army, 4 years. Mr. Eric Sappington, Navy, 4 years. Mr. Robert Sappington, Air Force, 4 years. Casey Schaller, 8 years, U.S. Coast Guard. John Shear, 2 years, Vietnam.
Family of Jerry Sullenberger. Kevin Scott, Army, 6 years. Chris Seifert, Army, 10 years. Charles Selbach, Marines, 4 years. Lewis Selby, Army, 2 years.
Mr. and Mrs. Clifford Sell, Navy. Matt Seneby, Navy, 4 years. Jeff Schaefer, Army, 4 years. Teresa Schaefer, Army, 3 years. Mr. and Mrs. Fred Sheridan, 3 years.
Bruce Schul, Air Force, 23 years. Ralph Silvers, Army, 20 years. Jacob Simmons, Air Force. Bill Smith, Air Force, 23 years. Stan Smith, Army, 25 years. Willie Smith, Navy. Larry Smith, Navy.
Carl South, Navy, 4 years. Leon Steinberg, Navy. Shelda Sternberg, Army, 20 plus years. Harry Stevenson, Air Force, 4 years. Eris Strong, Army. Mr. Paul Stroud, Army, 9th.
Family of Robert L. Taggart, Navy, 26 months. Michelle Keith Taggart, Army. Lawrence Philmy, Army, 2 years. Mr. David Thomas, Navy, 23 years. Mr. Robert Tyler. Gary Vandergrift, Army, 7 years.
Miss Morgan Walters, Army National Guard, 1 year. Mr. and Mrs. John Walker. James Walters, Army National Guard, 29 years. Mark Monseski, Army, 2 years. Erie Warhawk,
Army, 24 years. Ethan Welch, Army, 1 year.
Mr. Steve Welch, Army Rangers, 3 years. Ed Welch III, Army, 26 years. Mr. Kurt Wells. Roger Dell White, Army, 3 years. Mr. Raymond E. White, Jr., Air Force, 28 years.
Ronald Wilcox, Navy, 15 years. Roy L. Williams. Sidney Wills, Navy, 11 years. Family of Ernest Woods, Army. Lynn Wolford, Army, 8 years.
Family of Donnie Wren, Navy. Family of Layman Wren, Army, 3 years. Family of Mr. Robbie E. Wren, Marines. Mr. Harley Wright. William Wright.
We would now like to give thanks to our teachers, Teresa Schaefer and Dr. Amy James. We would also like to give thanks to our 2020 Southern Boone graduates and past graduates who are now serving. Nathan McCombs, Blake Smith, Isaac Smith, Lance Matheny, Angela Ramshead, Rick Weisner, Austin Atkins, Mike Martin, Lance Matheny, Austin Atkins, and Blaine Smith.
I will now introduce the Southern Boone High School Band playing Armed Force Medley.
We would like to take this opportunity to remember the incredible costs paid by those who gave their all to help preserve the freedoms we enjoy, those gallant individuals who fought and died for our country. Yet it is in remembering our fallen comrades that we are reminded of those whose fate is still unknown, who's still listed as missing in action and prisoners of war. We call your action to the small table, which occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that members of our armed forces are still missing from our ranks. We refer to them as POWs and MIAs. They are unable to be with their loved ones and families, so we join together to pay our humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absence. The table is round, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner, alone against his or her suppressors. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The yellow ribbon on the vase symbolizes a continued determination to account for those who are missing. The single rose in the vase signifies the blood that they may have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose reminds us of the family and friends of our missing comrades who keep faith while awaiting their return. A slice of lemon on the bread plate is to remind us of their bitter fate, those captured or missing in a foreign land. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless tears of those who have never come home and of the tears of their family and friends whose grief knows no end. The Bible serves to remind us of the comfort of faith offered to those who face seemingly insurmountable challenges, and it also reminds us of our country founded as one nation under God. The inverted class is to remind us that they cannot toast with us this day. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope, which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home into the open arms of a grateful nation. The American flag reminds us that they may never return home and have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedom. The chair is empty. Our comrades are missing. Now we ask for a moment of silence and remembering our fallen veterans, POWs, and MIAs.
Today, I have the honor of closing our Veterans Day Assembly. Our United States military currently has 1.3 million active duty personnel, supported by over 850,000 men and women in our reserves. Millions of Americans from every race, gender, creed, and religion have joined our armed forces, knowing full well they could be sent into harm's way at any moment. The United States military ensures the safety of millions of people around the world every day. My father didn't go to high school, but he did join the United States Navy in the 1950s. Through his experience, I learned to do well in school, respect the flag and our nation's leaders, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Most importantly, he raised me to love my country. Receiving this flag after his death is one of my proudest moments as his son. Thank you for your support of our nation and the brave men and women serving in our military who keep America safe from all enemies, foreign and domestic. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.